Yo! What's up, GameLeapers? This is Coach Cheeks, and in today's second upload, we're going to be talking about the 15 most broken champions for patch 12.9 because the notes got released on Twitter earlier today. So we're reacting to the notes and we're taking into account the buffs and nerfs that might upset or actually please some champions in the game, make them OP, make them really bad. So what is going to give you free OP next patch? Well, we are about to find out. But just before we do get into the video, one thing you guys have to do before you get into your next game is to download the Professor app linked in the description, because it allows you to quickly import the best rune page used from the best players in the world on the champion you're picking. You don't have to make the rune page, just one click of a button and bang, you're ready to go. But that's not all, because the app also allows you to scout your opponents, and the app will give you their stats, how well they play their champion, so you can know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. And the app also gives you an in-game overlay, so you can compare your CSing, your kill participation to your rank, or even challenger players like Faker. And there's a reason why 3 million people have downloaded this free application, guys. It's because it works. So get around it in season 12. Those links are in the description. And I'm actually not going to count this down. We're not going to go from 15 to number 1. I'm just going to give you guys 15 champions to choose from, and you can make your own list in the comment section. And what a champion to start off the video, this being Riven, who I can imagine being lots of people's number 1 champion because of how good she is. And it really started when Riot decided to buff Riven's E cooldown so it's lower by 2 seconds. And when you pair this with Conqueror, when Riot changed it back to 5 seconds, and then you add on all of the items that got changed in 12.3, so more attack damage and ability haze pretty much in everything, so Gore Drink, Black Cleaver, more Malmortius, and then you have Death Stance, where the healing passive is scaling off your bonus attack damage and also blocking a bit of magic damage as well. These items just scream Riven, and for a high skill ceiling champion to have these win rates in Platinum and above, it is absurd, and I can't believe she has survived another patch without getting jabbed by the balance team. Now, another top laner we have to consider in the top 15, guys, this is Fiora. So similar to Riven, because of those 12.3 item changes to Gore Drink, Ravenous, Hydra, Death Stance, more Malmortius, Fiora is certainly in a very strong position, and that's all that really needs to be said, to be honest. She's one of the most banned top lane champions because she counters so much because of her riposte, and it's not just because you can parry skill shots or abilities, it's because you can also slow the attack speed of the enemy champions. And lots of people underestimate this. They're like, oh, I actually didn't use an ability and Fiora wasted her W, but if it hits you, you're not going to be DPSing nearly as much because you won't be attacking as much. And the stats on your screens in higher reloads with Flash and Ignite, Fiora over a 52% win rate. Nothing is going to change in 12.9, so we have to think about her as well. Now, the final top laner to talk about, this isn't Sion, this isn't Jax, this isn't Akshan or Tryndamere, this is actually Camille. And just like Riven and Fiora, this really shouldn't come as a surprise because Camille has been killing it in season 12, one of the premier top laners. In fact, I remember her being like the number 1 top laner for the first few patches. And even though her W's cooldown may have been nerfed, do we really care about this? She is still going to be one-shotting champions in the late game with her Cho'Gath ultimate Q. She still has so much mobility, and because of her amazing scaling, even if you don't win the lane, you can always come back and have a positive influence. And just like Fiora and Riven, the buffs to the items, so Death Stance, Ravenous Hydra, more attack damage for the same gold, more Malmortius, these have boosted Camille even more, and this is why she is one of the 15 strongest champs for 12.9. Now, we're really going to switch things up with these next couple of champions because we're heading to the support role, and the first support I want you guys to put on your list, this is Senna. So for Senna, even though fleet footwork may have been nerfed, it's just the fact your Q has a 20% slow in it. And when you pair this with Eclipse, which is giving you armor penetration in the mythic passive, very important, because this will allow you to shred the tanky champions on the enemy team. And when you get Umbral Glaive after this, which remember is 100 gold cheaper because of last patch, and it's also allowing you to clear more wards because the cooldown in the passive is lower, this is so nice for Senna. And when you run Revitalize in your Resolve tree as your secondary tree, which is going to boost the heal from your Q, which can have a nice impact during the laning phase, especially in the late game, she is just too good of a champion. Just be careful of playing Senna into champions like Nautilus and Blitzcrank, because if one of their Qs land, you're probably going to die. So do be a little bit careful, but such a good support. And speaking of one of those supports who would really like to play against Senna in the bot lane, this is Blitzcrank, the other support I want you guys putting in your top 15 list in the comment section. So for Blitzcrank at the moment, well, the bot lane meta is actually kind of changing, because we're seeing AD carries like Lucian who has a dash, we're seeing AD carries like Vayne being played more, Jhin who has a lot more range, and these champions might be a little bit annoying for Blitzcrank to deal with, but all season he's been very good. And when Riot nerfed Gale Force a couple of patches ago, so the active, the cooldown is 20 seconds longer, this means the enemy AD carry isn't going to have their escape as much from your rocket grab, so you will be landing more of them. Also, in terms of supports at the moment who are really good and popular, so if we think of Sona, Soraka, Senna, Nami, Janna, land one rocket grab and it is GG for the bot lane. So guys, if you want to win games in 5-10 minutes, Blitzcrank, excellent support to pick. Now moving into the jungle role here, guys, I've got 4 champions for you you to put into your countdown. So the first of these is Nocturne. And funnily enough, I'm not talking about Nocturne with Lethal Tempo, which is typically what people are going. I'm actually talking about Nocturne with Conqueror. Because when you go Conqueror, you can run Alacrity. And because you're a melee champion, you'll be stacking Conqueror super quick, and getting to max stack should be easy enough. The attack speed from your W, and also the attack speed from Alacrity. So this is more than feasible. And then of course running Ultimate Hunter in the domination tree, because we want our paranoia, we want to use this as much as we can, because this is what really defines Nocturne as a champion. Without our ultimate, we are pretty weak. So we want our ultimate as much as possible. Just make sure if you are going to play Nocturne and you're going to full clear, so you're going to clear all 6 of your camps to hit level 4, put a second point in your Q at level 3, and then at level 4 you can put a point into your Unspeakable Horror. So Nocturne is the first of 4 junglers. Now the second of the 4 junglers, this is Rek'Sai, and it's pretty much impossible for me not to put Rek'Sai on this list because the stats are just insane. In every single elo as well, even in like silver and gold where people might struggle to play the champion mechanically, she still does very well. And in high reloads with the quick Conqueror stacking, the level 3 ganking, she is an absolute menace in the early game. And if you can get snowballing and you get an early Prowler's Claw, it is so easy to win games by yourself. So a bit like Blitzcrank in the jungle, if you want to win games in 5-10 minutes, Rek'Sai is arguably the best jungle to pick for this. So if you're really impatient by nature, definitely consider playing Rek'Sai for the rest of 12.8 and of course 12.9, because nothing is getting changed that's going to affect her. Now moving on to the third jungler in this countdown, we have Rengar. And I don't think anyone is really going to argue this, even though your W is getting reverted, so the battle roars damage to monsters. This is going back to what it was, but is this a big deal? Okay, you might clear Raptors, Krugs, and Wolves a little slower, but do we care? Of course not, because once you get to level 6, once you get some lethality in your kit and crit as well from Essence Reaver and then Duskblade, Rengar is just such a hard jungler to play against. It doesn't even matter if you're fed, it doesn't even matter if you have a stopwatch, it doesn't even matter if you have a support next to you. The champion just deals so much damn damage, and another reason for this is because of the rune page on your screen. So with First Strike, which is going to maximize the damage you deal in those short bursts, and then running Relentless Hunter, you can actually consider not getting boots for 2 to 3 items, because Relentless is going to carry you in terms of your movement speed around the map, and you can spend that all-important gold on damage. So this is a rune and build setup you guys can consider abusing for the rest of 12.8 and 12.9. So Rengar, where does he fit in into your countdowns? Now the last jungler, bit similar to Rengar, in fact the rune page is pretty much identical, this is Kha'Zix. So First Strike, the Inspiration Tree, all the same, and then we're running Treasure Hunter, not Relentless Hunter. Because Relentless Hunter, yes, it is nice for Kha'Zix, but Treasure Hunter, the gold you get from takedowns, this is going to accelerate your scaling, because in the early game, unlike Rengar, you don't have the power that he has. So if we can somehow cheat our way to level 6, and if we can cheat our way to Duskblade and accelerate those points of power, this is going to make our life as Kha'Zix a lot easier. But just one tip before you lock in Kha'Zix in champion selection, the mid and jungle synergy is going to be important. So if you have a late game scaling mid laner like a Veigar or a Kassadin or a Vladimir, someone who doesn't have any early game power, playing Kha'Zix, you are very susceptible therefore to early game junglers and mid laners who can invade you, run at your second buff, and put pressure on you. So in effect, you won't even be able to scale into a game and get to Duskblade because the game will already be over. So if you have a champion in the mid lane who will probably have priority, like a Zoe, like a Syndra, someone who has power in the early levels, this allows you to scale for free more often. So just think about that in your champion selections before you lock in Bugsplat, but still great champion. Now the last 6 champions we have to talk about, guys, 3 of these are mid laners, 3 of these are AD carries. So why don't we start with the mid laners? So the first of these is Yasuo. No surprises here because the HP buffs a couple of patches ago, and because the ultimate buff, so your ultimate in the early game is on a lower cooldown. This is going to give you more opportunities for kills, and in the early game during the early laning phase, this is when Yasuo is actually at his weakest, because it's really in the mid to late game where he can take over games. You know, the old 0-10 power spike. So having an early game boost is certainly nice, and to be honest, probably unwarranted. I don't know why Riot decided to do this, but they did, and we have to live with these results. And the results are these: a 59% win rate with this rune page and high reloads. This is in Challenger, by the way, where Yasuo in the mid lane, it's a 55% win rate. And even in lower elos, it's around 50-51%. And this champion has a lot of mechanics. This champion requires a bit of matchup knowledge. It requires a bit of jungle tracking. So there is certainly some skill involved. But the point is this: he is so broken that it doesn't even matter if you're a Yasuo main or you've put 10 games into him, the result is probably going to be the same. Now after Yasuo, this is a champion who would probably like to play against him. This is Veigar, because of his event horizon. Maxing this second, getting the cooldown down to 12 seconds, which will be a lot lower than this in an actual game because of the ability haste you will have from your items. It's devastating. And remember guys, it's not about one enemy champion you can lock down with your event horizon. This can be multiple, and in the mid to late game, which is where you really shine because of your accelerated scaling with your Q stacking, you can just solo win team fights without even using your damage abilities. You can carry them by trapping multiple enemy champions into your cage, your teammates come in and they clean house. It's a pretty obnoxious playstyle to play against, but we want to make it even more obnoxious, which is why in our room page we're going to be running Predator and then Ingenious Hunter, which is going to reduce Predator's cooldown, and this allows us to run into the fights because mobility isn't our strong suit, and actually gap close to the enemy champions, get close enough to them to put our cage around the priority targets. Just be careful, a bit like Kha'Zix picking Veigar with a scaling jungler, because in some games you won't be allowed to do it. So optimally, if you have a J4 or if you have a Lee Sin, someone with a bit of early game power, they can protect you so you scale for free. Now the last mid laner who won't have to worry about this, guys, this is Ahri, who's actually getting nerfed this patch. So you might be like, why on earth would you include her in the 12.9 countdown? Well, I think the nerfs aren't going to be that significant. Your charms cooldown going up and your spirit rushes cooldown going up by 10 seconds. Is this going to mean much? For sure. You might get less kills, you might get less assists, but the point is this, you still have every single strength you once had. You have the damage, you have the setup, you have the utility, you have the mobility, the wave clear. There are zero weaknesses for this champion. It's kind of like Vayne with lethal tempo at max stacks. Nothing can hold back an Ahri from doing what she wants to do, and you can see this is in Platinum and above, by the way, the toughest matchups. Talon at a 48.5% win rate. That's the toughest matchup, only 48.5%. The other champions, this will be like 40%, 45%. This is close to 50%. So if that's the worst, are you kidding? This just tells us how good this champion is. Now we've got the 3 AD carries, guys, for 12.9, and this is exciting. The first AD carry to consider, this is Jhin, and because of those buffs to last patch, to your W, to your E, they have definitely improved Jhin in lower elos. Now in higher elos, I don't actually think Jhin is that good, and this is shown by his 45 to 46% win rates in Master and above. So I'm really just basing this off the stats, guys, in Platinum and above, and they look good. 52% with this rune page with flash and heal, over 51.5%. This definitely carries some weight, so this is why Jhin is on this countdown, and I'd love to know if there are any Jhin mains out there. Do you actually think he's strong at the moment? Can you feel a difference from last patch? Now the first of the two final AD carries to think about, we have Vayne, and just like I mentioned, guys, Vayne with lethal tempo, when you get this to max stacks, no weakness AD carry, 1v9 AD carry, 1v1 AD carry, she has everything. Even if the early game is going to be difficult, which it should be, once you get out of this and you win in lower elos, because people don't want to win lane, people don't want to damage the enemy Vayne, they're more than happy letting her hit the minion wave and get CS and scale. But if you are going to play Vayne, guys, I'd definitely recommend running Exhaust as your summoner spell, because you want this in solo queue. Your support sometimes is going to go missing, your support sometimes is going to run it down, and you're left to fend for yourself. Exhaust is going to give you the opportunity to do just this, so this is very important. Just make sure to max your W followed by your Q and then of course your E, so this should come as no surprise, as should the last champion, the last AD carry for the top 15 champions, guys, for 12.9, and this is Lucian. And ever since Riot buffed his ratios, his scaling in his vigilance passive and his AD per level, Lucian has taken off, and it's really good as well when you pair this with spellcasting supports who are really popular. So if we think of Yumi's, Soraka's, Janna's, Nami's, in particular Nami, oh my goodness, this is quite the combination. But what's interesting, this page here is taken from Challenger, so these Lucian players aren't actually taking Gale Force, because if you remember, Gale Force got nerfed, 110-second cooldown, and as Lucian you do have a dash in your Relentless Pursuit, so you're less reliant on this as other AD carries like Jhin, Jinx, Caitlyn for example. This allows you to go Kraken Slayer, and the damage you deal with Kraken on the third hit, and remember your passive is super useful for actually proccing the Kraken passive, this can be devastating, and it's so snowbally, it's so good, and because you're such a good early game champion, this is more than viable to actually try out. So I'd highly recommend doing this in your games, but if I was making the countdowns in the comment section, which is what I want you guys to do, I would probably put Lucian in the top 3 champions. I think he's above every other AD carry in the game, and if he's open, you should definitely pick him before the enemy AD carry does in champ select. So those guys were the top 15 champions for 12.9. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to leave a like down below, and until tomorrow's daily season 12 upload, this has been Coach G. Sweet.